have Discord in full screen, have the stream open, and click on hide members, and you can make the stream a little bit bigger. Kraus has a psychopath ultra-wide monitor, so you're just gonna have to deal with it.
Cool. Yeah, so hopping into Aeronog, he rebelled against our main city here, and in favor of the power that the Primalist offered him. He's going to have a bunch of lava stuff. This fight's pretty straightforward. So we're just going to jump into the first mechanic here. Then that is Flame Rift. So let's just watch this snipping. Flame Rift will target a couple random players. And what we're going to try to do is, as Flame Rift drops off the players, it'll drop this pool of lava. And then the pool of lava will also spawn some ads, these flaming Tarasek. So let's watch a bit here.
Pretty straightforward fight. There's two phases alternating between both phases. During phase 1, several players will be debuffed with Flame Rift, and after a few seconds this expires, deals damage in a 4-yard AoE, and drops a puddle of prime.
Okay, right there, they all dropped it grouped up. The positioning of this will likely be on top of existing flame pools, lava puddles, whatever, and of course grouped up so that we can quickly AoE them down.
Flow. Strangely enough, if you stand in this lava puddle, you take damage. But more importantly, each puddle will spawn a Rancid Tarasek ad, which fixates a random player in the raid. On Heroic, these ads also enrage below 50% HP, increasing their movement speed by 75% and damage done by an additional 50%.
Cool. So a lot of important things there. So let's just break that down a bit. So we're likely gonna, fill up a lot of behind us with these lava puddles, right? But then key in there is that the ads fixate. So the raid will be in between the lava puddles and the boss, so that when they're fixated, they're all walking in the same direction towards the boss and getting AoE down. I saw a version of this where this is kind of flipped. So we're always having the boss on the edge of the puddles. We'll just have to see how that works once we get into raid, whether melee are able to manage that. That just maximizes cleave onto the boss and onto the ads. But
if I may cut in, I strongly recommend we do play it that way, because when we get to Mythic, an ad will be spawned off of the active tank, and that ad needs to be a prio target. So it's going to spawn basically on top of where the boss already is.
Okay, yeah. So even more reasoning to kind of min-max there. We'll just have to watch our feet. That fixation means if you're ranged, don't be off to the side, so that the ads are all spreading out. We definitely want to all stay in a ball, right? Okay. Following this outer ring is what I was seeing a lot of, but I know that Cinder had another kind of pathing here, where we kind of, maximize all of the room in the circle. I think the boss dies by the time we would complete the circumference of the circle if we were to go in this manner, but this is just another thing that we could perform. So just keep an eye out for this if we do decide to do it during raid time, where we're kind of weaving the boss back and forth.
There's room for like a very loose zigzag going on where we don't want to make a complete circle, because the major mechanic of the intermission that we're going to get to in a sec cannot cross these flame puddles.
Right. If you want to kill it.
I mean, yes, we want to kill it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's the first major mechanic here, right? That is Flame Rift. You can kind of see how we deal with that here. So you can have this open during the raid, and then when he reaches 100 energy, collapsing army is going to occur, in which he runs to the center of the room, and a bunch of these flame guys are going to spawn around the outer ring. So let's take a look at that now.
ahead of the puddles as needed or when needed. Now, depending on tuning, you could also just drop all flame rifts in melee right behind boss, smack down stuns, and AoE him down boss away. Now, that's really all there was to it. Oh, and moving out of a frontal. Now, when boss hits 100 energy, it will run into the middle and raise an army of collapsing flames in a Shadow Moon Burial Ground-esque mechanic. A circle of fire elementals spawn, each connected with a beam forming a circle around the...
Now, this is important right here. So you see that they have a fire shield around them. That's because they walked over the puddles. So ideally, we're always going to be killing the one closest counterclockwise of the fire puddles. So in the direction of our movement, right? So you can see some frost blast going on here on the first vulnerable one.
Encounter space. They slowly move towards the boss in the middle, touch an elemental or beam, and you die. Name of the game is to nuke one of them down to create a gap and then run through. And as soon as you kill one, boss will follow you out. Now to somewhat
we'll put a raid marker down.
If these elemental...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it just every the one to the left of the one that's shielded, right? If there's not lava there, right? So
does boss still take damage during that phase? Because I noticed there's people still hitting the main boss.
They slowly move towards the boss.
As of testing, yes, but he does pulse damage around him, so it's difficult to hit him. And another thing that we'll get to in Mythic, being that this is the first boss, we should be preparing for Mythic pretty quickly, is that there will be an inner ring preventing you from hitting the boss that creeps outward. So there will be 2 ads to kill. Boss should be bottom priority during intermission. But once there's a hole in the ring that's safe, then you can transition to the boss as long as it's safe to hit him.
Yep. If you couldn't quite visualize how this is looking on the arena, let's just jump over to raid plan. So, these are the pools that we left behind. The raid is obviously grouped up just to the left if you're looking out from the center, right? These ones are going to get shielded, right? So we can't kill those. And being identified here is the one that we're going to be killing. In the middle right here is the Mythic mechanic where we also have one in the center to kill. Okay. Kind of makes sense. Any questions?
For the DPS stack, will we be utilizing a marked player to follow? I mean, I know relatively we're going to be stacking just together, but would it be better to have kind of like Sludge Fist where there's one mark in the world to continuously follow?
That could be beneficial. I think it's going to be very obvious, be in between the boss and the lava.
I will actually say no. We want to be tight spread around the boss at all times because his frontal cleave targets a random player. And if we're pixel stacked, we all have to move every single time.
Oh, there's good reasoning for it too.
Does that cleave leave puddles on the ground?
It does not. Okay. It is just a massive damage cone.
Yeah, so we will be, sparsely but closely stacked in between both dodging cones.
Gotcha, that makes sense. It's a lot like Guardian and Sepulture. Or Sanctum.
Cool. Tanks are going to swap on Burning Wound. We'll just have to test out how many stacks that is. Molten Cleave is the name of that cone that we were just discussing. Here's kind of that raid plan. Start on here, and then what we're going to do for Collapsing Army. Again, so you can just have this open during raid and know exactly what to do.
Does that frontal cone ever overlap with the when the people stack circles next to each other?
I don't believe so. That would be some really brutal RNG to deal with.
And I think that, actually, we will have to deal with that, especially if we're positioning the boss here, right?
No matter where the boss is positioned, there will always be some cone of safe standing place. It's not that wide of a cone. It's about like 60 degrees.
Yeah. Do like grips work and like Typhoon and whatnot? Do those work on the ads when they spawn?
Yep.
I'm not sure about the Mythic ad, but the rest of the ads can be fully CC'd.
Unless they go over the puddles, right?
The intermission ads cannot be CC'd whatsoever. The marching, collapsing army, you have to just burn.
Yeah, so there's ads not in the intermission, which spawn from the lava pools, and then there's ads that form the ring. Yeah, and then after you solve that intermission there, it just repeats, and you do that until you kill the boss. So that's it for the fight. Any questions before we go on to the next?
I got questions.
Yeah, fire away.
Okay, so this is kind of obvious, but I wrote it down anyway. We're always going to go counterclockwise.
Likely we'll drop a star mark, like right here, and we'll go counterclockwise. Yeah, I think that's just naturally kind of how everybody likes to move. I know that I have my mouse on the right side of the screen a lot, so it helps me to turn inwards for things.
Gotcha. And then my other question is the cleave that targets the random player. Is that something that you have to take, or you can move once you get targeted?
You can move. It aims at a random player, but it won't follow them. So it just means it faces a random direction, basically.
Gotcha.
Are we going to be holding the boss close enough to the fire that people that are dropping the fire can still hit the boss?
That would be the goal, because again, when we get to Mythic, the current tank is going to have a pool, so it's likely going to be out of range for about 2 seconds. If
Unacceptable.
You're an outlaw rogue. You're the only one who won't have to deal with it.
Looking out for those bad warriors.
Owned.
Yeah, I'm imagining it'll be kind of sideways configuration here.
Yeah.
So the intermission occurs when the boss hits 100% energy. Is the energy just passive generation, or does anything increase the speed of the energy?
Doesn't seem that way. It seems to be a fixed maybe every 2 minutes or so. I'll have to check the fight videos.
Okay, so we can get less intermissions if we just push the boss with good DPS.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I would imagine we'll probably have 2 intermissions.
That would be a good goal. By the time you get to a third intermission, you're getting a lot of fire on the ground, and it gets pretty tough to work around.
Are we lusting during intermission to kill the ads faster, or are we lusting somewhere else?
No, this will be a lust on pole fight.
Roger that.
Cool. That's all for Aaron Ogden.
We're getting to my baby of a studied fight. I took a lot of time figuring out the timings on this one, because this is going to be an HPS check fight coming up next.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to pass it over to Cinder for Taros. Is that good with you?
Yeah.
Cinder? Okay. No, I'm just going to keep my little setup over here, so I'm just going to stop sharing screen.
Ooh, okay. Let me see if I'm prepared to share.
Yes, so that I'm ready to just hop to Primal Council. So I'll pass it to you.
Okay. I think I had things vaguely prepared for this. So everyone swap over to the new stream so I can fill my ears with bloops of everyone joining.
I love this fight from what I've seen of it.
Yeah.
Me too. It's like Siren Halandris.
Here we go. There's my kill video. Okay. I don't have it queued up properly, though. Very embarrassing. So this is a fight where the boss is fixed in the middle of the room. And a very important mechanic is if he doesn't have someone to hit, he will hit everyone in the raid at the same time. So tanks, you're staying in melee range the whole fight. No exceptions. There's a few major mechanics, and they go in a very fixed order through the fight. This ends up being a bit of a dance. There will be a large soak that I'm going to very quickly pull up that stanky video on and put it over here. Definitely prepared for this. So the fight starts out immediately with a giant soak circle. Everyone needs to get into that and split it. It'll leave an aftershock after that explodes, so everyone then needs to immediately get out of it. Soak circle, and aftershock. Looks a bit like the Halandra circles. During that mechanic, several players are going to get marked with a little circle around them that looks a bit like this. If you're marked with a circle, you will erupt with a big spike pillar. This pulses raid-wide damage. Immediately after this mechanic, a tank beam, also like Halandris, is going to come out. That you should see there, that big line. That big line will blow up the pillars. When a pillar blows up, it deals massive raid-wide damage but stops ticking. Our goal is going to be to line up several of these pillars at a time so that the tank can blow them all up at once. And preferably, we want to line them up while we're also soaking. So, I don't know how well I'm going to be able to... Oh, raid plan doesn't like being zoomed. Okay. For example, this one, everyone's going to be standing in the middle of this soak as much as possible. And the people who are targeted are going to stand on the edge on either side so that one tank line can go through there, and then after the soak, a tank line can go through the next line. 2 and 4, 3 and 3, whatever it is, as long as they're clumped in a couple separate clumps. After that slam combo with the line, which does a lot of raid-wide damage, we'll be looking at healing and defensive cooldowns there.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
It looked like that they had a mark on one of their ranged X, I think on Stinky right here. Will we have a range group so that we're called up to that soak?
Yes, we're gonna try to keep groups quite tight together for the most part. Where's my other video gone?
My question on the soak is, does it have to be the entire raid group, or is there a minimum player count?
There is a minimum player count. It's not super specific. It's just a 1 million damage split between however many people it hits, basically. On Mythic, it has to be the entire raid group.
Gotcha. I was just wondering for minimalizing damage output.
Yeah, it's it will evenly split among everyone hit. On Mythic, it will evenly split among everyone hit and then hit everyone else in the raid as well. So if it does 1 million damage and 5 people soak it, the whole raid takes 200,000 damage and we wipe. If it does 1 million damage and 20 people soak it, we all take 50,000 damage and it's easy.
On normal and heroic, you can just ice block it, right?
Yes. Yeah, you can solo it on normal and heroic. Being this is an early boss, we'll be trying to practice positioning for Mythic as much as possible because we want to get 2 Mythic kills consistently for that vault slot as soon as we can. After that tank combo, he's going to do a big slam on the ground. On heroic, that's going to leave a bunch of these pools around. These pools are vaguely targeted at players, so the range stack can actually back off and bait them away from the group. And then it loops back into another combo of soak and pillars. Standing at the edge of the soak to leave the pillars. The tank will draw a line through one of them. And then, instead of a small blast at his feet, I believe the next thing he does... Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's going to be another slam like this. The ranged backs away and leaves the pools at the back. Don't worry about those squirrels, those are Mythic. And at this point, he's going to chop off a quarter of the room like Sardonathrius. And the whole fight is going to loop until the whole room is filled with these annihilation blasts. That's basically the soft enrage. You can't really hit him anymore at that point. But this is just an infinite loop of soak and leave pillars, break pillars, dodge swirlies. It's relatively simple, but the positioning ends up being very tight, and there's a lot of raid-wide damage for the healers to deal with.
Yeah, it looks like they're doing very well.
Yeah, I picked this specific video because this this testing group had their positioning down perfectly in this kill. I'm hoping that I'll be able to find or make a weak aura that we can use for letting people know if they're targeted by pillars, whether they should stand on the left or on the right group. But this group was just able to improvise it, and there's enough time to just sort of make it work. Plus, the pizza pie slice will break any pillars that you missed. So it's not too bad if you miss one or two. Positioning-wise, we're just going to end up going around the room counterclockwise again. After each pizza pie slice, we're going to try to put the soak as close to that as possible, just so that all of the RNG pools end up being placed here and here and here, so that we have room for the next one here. Because the next pizza pie slice is going to take up this chunk, and so on. For the most part, though, it becomes a rhythm that you can learn very quickly. So I don't think this fight's going to end up being a problem once we have the throughput to survive it.
Yeah, it looks like a really nice cadence fight.
Yeah, this is a fight that I am a very big fan of, design-wise. And at some point, I'll make this slide look as pretty as the rest of them, but for now, I've got the cadence written down on the slide for reference. Not much else to say on this one, honestly. Anyone have particular questions?
The only question I had was when we burst those pillars, is it a straight damage throughput or does it leave a dot? Because
it will also leave a dot, so that's what part of the reason why we don't want to do them all at once. See if I can find the details of that.
It's just it wasn't specified in a lot of the videos that I watched.
Yeah, my understanding is a pillar explosion will leave a dot on people, and that will stack based on however many pillars are blown up at the same time. Might be able to find an example of that.
So
yeah.
It's basically Stone Legion Council mixed with Denathrius and Kel'Thuzad.
Yeah, you probably can't see this in my screen share, but right now the player has 6 stacks of ticking damage from the pillars, and as soon as these blow up, it becomes 7 seconds of 3 big stacks and 3 stacks of the remaining pillars.
Oh yeah, look at that.
So the stacks, so they do stack, but they don't refresh the cooldown of the stack.
No, so it'll just be like when you blow up one line of pillars, the next tank blast isn't for another 15 or so seconds.
Right, that's good that we don't have to worry about somebody accidentally popping half a second too early and then we'll raid.
Yeah, no, the timings of this fight are very clean. Everything's spaced out so that one mechanic ends when the next one's ready. Except for this mythic thing, which is that after every slam, every single player gets a debuff, and you have to clear that debuff by touching another player, which then explodes. That's a problem for later.
Yeah, it looks like they're 5 healing this fight as well.
The throughput requirements are going to be pretty intense, I think, because of the amount of raid wide that's happening all in a row. The everyone soaks at once does a raid wide. The pillars will tick raid wide, and the tank blasting the pillars will do a raid wide nuke that also has a raid wide tick. So this is going to be about a 10-second period of insane raid wide damage to heal through.
This sounds like a good fight for our healing trials to research and show their skills.
Go find a kill video from your favorite WoW YouTuber and take a look at the timings and think about what your cooldown timings might look like for that.
This looks like favorite healing fight.
It's going to be super fun for everyone, I think.
Are you guys going to be dictating those healing cooldowns, or
come Mythic? Come Mythic, when we get to fights that are particularly difficult or have fixed timings like this, we might. It's going to depend on how rough it is without that. If you guys are able to improvise it in a way that we get through, that's awesome. If you communicate as healers amongst yourselves, like I hope you will, that's even better. But if we got to Sledge Fist in Nathria on Mythic, every single healing spell cast would probably be on a spreadsheet for you to reference, because some fights are just too intense to improvise.
So from heroic and above, are we going to be doing the range stack thing that they do, where they go to the back to bait when the rebel comes down, and then back into the front by the melee when the soak comes?
Yep, absolutely. We'll be because these pools will start showing up on heroic. We'll be doing a range stack for baiting purposes.
Are we going to do Warlock Gate for the Ravage?
Probably, yeah. Especially because there will also be a Rebel drop right after the Ravage. So we'll be aiming to Warlock Gate toward the back of the room.
Some form of movement, yeah. And especially if we're all stacked in a range group, then it makes a gate easy.
Yeah, so if I can... this is going to be... I don't know if I can just refresh this and lose all my edits. Perfect! So when this pizza pie slice starts getting nuked, if the range stack is all piled up here, or well, probably more like here, then we'll be trying to do a Warlock Gate that kind of goes toward the back of the room, so that we bait the next puddles back here, rather than having everyone clump up, getting ready for the soak, and then suddenly there's pools all over where we wanted to soak. Any last thoughts on this one?
What was the heroic change?
Heroic change
Rebel.
is that Rebel existing at all, I believe.
So the whole premise of this fight is to stay as close to the old pie or the crap on the floor to bait it as close to the old crap on the floor, right? So we don't take up the whole room.
Yeah, exactly. We just want to, there's going to be RNG puddles that show up everywhere that we have to work around. But over the course of the fight, we want to keep... This will be a recurring theme in a lot of these fights, is we want to keep the poop clumped together so we can work around it better. And this is like Sledge Fist. You can step through it for a second if you need to.
Just blink.
Not instant death, but it hurts.
Yeah. That's another mechanic that we're going to see a lot of, is things that hurt a little bit. Particularly as we move on to the next boss, Kraus.
Yeah. Well,
Segue.
Wow. I thought the next boss was Senarth. Is it Council?
Should be Council.
Well, it
might
depends
be one of
which way
those...
we go, because
it's a left and right.
3. Yeah.
Well, regardless. We'll look at Council next. Chris, you probably had more things prepared, so back to his screen.
Jeez.
okay. Primal Council, right. It's a fight. It's going to have 3 bosses up during the 4 bosses up the entire time. One is air, one's frost, and one's earth, and one's fire, and they all have their own unique abilities. And it's definitely rock, paper, scissors in that they all interact, and we'll be using abilities that we kind of leave behind from previous bosses to deal with ones that come up, and that'll make more sense as we go through it here. So on the left here, let me present for Ellie.
Hell yeah.
So much better.
You can see those 4 major mechanics. So the electric guy is going to zap us all with some blue rings. We'll get into that. The earthing guy is going to form pillars. On the right, in parentheses right here, for every mechanic, I've done it with all the bosses, is the jargon that we'll be using. So this is rings, pillars. The fire guy is going to shoot out some meteors, which we'll just call meteors. And then the frost guy will put an ice debuff on us called Primal Blizzard. And they all interact with each other. And it's going to be a very chaotic and fun fight. I'm very excited for this one. I think this might be my favorite. But yeah, so let's watch a bit about each of the abilities. And then we'll kind of go through it on raid plan. So first, let's hop into the video.
I personally do not have audio for this, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say,
No
I don't
audio
hear
here.
anything.
That sucks.
Very well designed
There we go now.
council, I must say.
Cool.
Regardless, we have is very nice of them. A very well designed council, I must say. Regardless, we have Kadros Ice Wrath. Basically, doesn't need to be tanked, hits like a moist noodle at best, but does need to be interrupted whenever they cast Frost Spike. Targets a rando player, deals a chunk of damage, and yeah, that's it. Just interrupt. And at one
That is not a major mechanic. That is just something that we have to interrupt constantly on the boss. So we'll have a kick or order for that.
100 energy, Kadros starts channeling Primal Blizzard over 10 seconds, during which everyone in the raid takes a ton of frost damage every 1 second, and increases frost damage taken by 10%, and reduces fire damage taken by 50%.
Okay, so if you just saw what he did there, he got the debuff, as you can see right here. And in order to remove the debuff, you step into lava pools.
And reduces fire damage taken by
easy enough.
15% per stack. However, during this channel, potentially spreading other mechanics if you aren't careful. And Scorching Ground removes the Blizzard debuff and depopsiclify popsicles. And this Scorching Ground is made by Embar Firepath with his Meteor.
If you don't remove that ice debuff, you'll get encapsulated in a tome. And then we'll all slash laugh at you as we try to bust you out, and hopefully you don't die.
Slash laugh macros will be required.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a weak aura like Dyson died.
Right. How do I remove that ice debuff? Well, the Meteor Axe's ability right here is going to drop those lava puddles that we just saw on the ground. It's going to target 2 players.
Axis. Embar targets 2 players with a 10-yard fiery circle. After a few seconds, this deals lethal damage split between all targets and increases damage taken.
Okay. We just saw 2 players drop it right there. And what we also noticed is that it broke the earthen pillars. Right?
By subsequent Meteor Axis, you can't stack these 2 up. And on top of this, upon expiration, you spawn Scorched Ground, which deals a ton of damage if you cuddle in it. And this axe also shatters any earthen pillars that are up. Now on top of this, Embar will also use Slashing Blaze at 100 energy.
Hey, Slashing Blaze is not a major mechanic. That's just a tank mechanic. He'll slash a tank. We're going to try to direction that away from the raid.
Frontal for 15 seconds, and this stack, so eventually tanks will need to swap on this one. Then we have Dethea Stormlash, which is Dethea Ascended, another boss in the same raid. Uses some of those about 1 or 2 tiers. Otherwise, there's Chain Lightning. Unsure how this is intended to work. Face, Conduct. Mark, however,
this is the last major ability right here, Conductive Mark. This is the rings, and how you get rid of the rings is you need to walk within. You have to get one of the earthen pillars inside of your ring, and then it grounds itself out. But if you get one of your friendly raid members inside of your ring, then you will pass the ring onto them, and they will get another ring. So it can kind of spread very easily there.
Spreading. Targets like a third of the raid with a 5-yard circle, deals a chunk of damage on application and then ticking damage. Also increases nature damage taken by 10% per stack. Now, more importantly, if a unmarked player moves into a marked player circle, they get marked as well, so it duplicates. It also refreshes the OG circle.
See, they are not dealing with this mechanic very well. As you can see, they're all trying to get to these pillars, but they've isolated the pillars from the raid and where the bosses are with these lava pools. So that causes those that are trying to run and get rid of their electric debuff on the pillars to run over other raid members, and you see it spreading here on almost every single raid member. So having a clear path to remove a mechanic is a very important thing about this fight, and you'll kind of see that as we go over the raid plan.
Circle's debuff timer, and if 2 marked players cuddle, they get increased nature damage taken stacks instead, and also refreshes. So this is one of those legendary spread mechanics. Now you can also remove conductive mark by grounding them into an earthen pillar, which Opal Fang helps supply. Very thoughtful. So these earthen pillars targets 4 random players or player locations. After a bit, a pillar emerges, dealing damage.
Key there, it targets, so they're baitable. And that's all 4 of the major mechanics. Some other minor mechanics is a frostbolt that we have to kick, and that lightning bolt that we have to kick, and then the 2 tank mechanics. But let's just focus on the major 4. The other minor ones are pretty trivial. On death, they also all have a unique kind of mini enrage, so we have to kill all the bosses in unison. So let's break down how we're going to be dealing with those 4 major mechanics now. Okay, so we're going to start with all of the bosses stacked on star, right? And we're going to kind of drop earthen pillars and lavas behind us, and we're going to slowly migrate around the room. Right, so all the mechanics are always behind us, and they're going to be easily accessible by ranged or by melee. And one key thing here is raid is always spread out and sparse. I don't mean be on Pluto on the other side of the map. I just mean if a mechanic comes out like conductive mark, don't be so close to another person that you instantaneously spread it. Okay. So right here, we kind of see a breakdown of where you should be. The bosses are going to, of course, spawn at star. The tanks are going to try to do a great job of shooting that cone off the edge. We're going to be spread out in this yellow zone, and primarily directly on the text here, so that we can bait the puddles and so that we can bait the earthen pillars. If you're targeted by those meteor axes, the ones that drop the lava puddles, do not drop them in the center, please. That's going to be very vital to our movement so that we can access things at all times. So you can kind of see the cadence of the fight as it progresses along here. In the top left, you have us just starting off. There's the AoE to tank slam, and then the cone. The melee will kind of all be behind the progression of where the tanks are going to be moving us. And of course, the raid is spread out. I'm calling it a pie slice here. It's more like kind of a rotating rectangle. But yeah, and then, we drop some shit and we move forward. We drop some more crap and we move forward. And then we drop some more and we move forward until there's no more room. The center, we're never going to fill up with fire. So we're going to try to do all the mechanics in this blue zone out here, right? Okay. It's definitely okay, tanks, to have us right up against a lava, as long as you see a channel to an earthen pillar, right? So I don't have that pictured here, but let me just explain that. Okay, so say, you're making a movement because you see that behind us is getting a bit filled up. You don't have to move so far that the melee can't get to the lava pools once they get the frost debuff, right? So this configuration can probably be a bit closer, right? Just making sure that there's always channels to earthen pillars in some manner, right? You'll just have to use your best judgment here on when's time to kind of scooch forward, or just be overly communicative of your movements and what you're planning to do. All right, so that's kind of the movement, a big old circle. Yeah.
There's a couple points in addition to this to keep in mind. We need those earthen pillars to clear the lightning, but they also do raid-wide ticking damage, just like in the last fight. So we need to use the meteors to destroy a lot of them as well.
Yes, yeah.
But if you take your meteor all the way into a big pile of pillars too far away from the group, and there's so many pillars no one can stand in your soak, you're just going to die. And your fire might be too far away from everyone to use it for the blizzard. So we're trying to keep a fairly tightly loose spread so that all of our mechanics are close enough together that we can deal with all of them.
In the yellow spread, yeah. So don't be
Yeah.
on Pluto. Be in the next pie slice area. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. I skipped over it in the major mechanics.
Sorry, go to the other slide one more time. Where the ranged people are hanging out in the middle there, don't spend too much time in the middle unless you have to, because if that fills up with earth pillars, we're going to need to break them, and that means we're going to need to put lava there, and then the whole free space to walk through is gone.
Yep.
The middle is a transit zone, not a stand-sit zone.
Yeah, so 4 people get targeted with pillars. We're going to try to keep the number of pillars low because they do pulse with damage. So every meteor axe targeted individual should be looking to break 2 to 3 pillars. Only 3 pillars if we didn't clean up 2 in the last time. So we always kind of have a steady amount going so that we can get rid of conductive marks. Prioritizing the ones in the back that are not accessible, right? Or the ones that are on the far edge that are not accessible. So if, kind of right here, how I did it, how this lava guy would hit these 2, and then this lava guy would hit, the one up there, and we leave one available. There would be more here, of course, but yeah. So we're using the meteor axis to break 2 to 3 of them, prioritizing the ones in the back or on the edge.
There's one other caveat here that did not get referenced in the video, that when the blizzard is happening, if you step in a fire to clear your stacks of blizzard, the fire will shrink a little bit. And if you clear your stacks too often, or you stand in the fire for too long, you'll actually make the fire disappear, and somebody might not be able to clear their stacks and will turn into a laughable ice tomb. So everything in this fight is going to be a game of being close to all of the different mechanics without them cluttering our path too much. This is one where I didn't find a single group in the mythic testing that was able to do it consistently the way the last fight went. Put it that way.
Cool. Any questions on the cadence of the fight and how all the abilities interact? There's all 4 elements, and they all interact with each other in a certain way. Just understanding how they interact and where to be, I think, is most important here. Pretty clear? All right. Of course, have this up during raid so you can see pillars, meteors, and ice debuffs. So going on to the next boss, if there's no questions, it's going to be Sinar. Okay, this is a platform boss, and it's going to have a lot of phases, specifically 4. It's going to be platform 1, 2, 3, and then there's a last phase in which we kind of burn and deal with some enhanced mechanics. The first platforms, the mechanics are all the same. only in the last burn phase do they kind of evolve or flip. So all the major mechanics are going to be here on the left. There's lots of area denial with puddles or webs on the ground, and lots of optimizing our space as we progress up the spire. The boss will continually ascend up the spire, and we'll be running upstairs and chasing it all the way until its doom in the burn phase. So let's check that out right now. Oh, I don't have the YouTube video up. Give me 1 second.
One some more before reaching her faces.
Okay, I wanted to show you guys a specific part first. All right, so this is the very beginning of the fight, and this is on platform 1. And look how everybody's grouped on the right. The boss is in the center, of course, and then we have this Frost Breath Arachnid. This is the major ad. It'll always be prio that we kill, right? So kind of the general cadence here is we're going to be filling up on the right and moving left. And that is Icy Ground. So the Icy Ground projectile is going to be targeted on several random players. We're going to fill up the side of the room and then slowly backfill. The big ad, which is called a Frost Breath Arachnid, has a frontal that also drops this icy ground. If you stand on the icy ground, you just take the damage, and we need to make sure that we don't run out of room. And you also slip and slide on it, so you have a bit of momentum to your movement there. The tanks are going to do a great job of shooting that ice frontal onto the patches that already exist. Definitely not shooting it onto where we're going, so that we constantly have free area to move. This ad will try to be as close to the boss as possible so that we can cleave. From some of the videos I was watching, it was a little too chaotic, trying to do that all the time with dodging stuff, so we'll just do that the best that we can. But yeah, main idea here is to backfill the ice, backfill.
Like a dentine ice, Senarth, the cold breath brings you 2 faces with an intermission-ish. So throughout the fight,
Okay, the white swirlies here were the baitable patchy ice that you see. So they got a little bit on the left. We're going to try to get all ours on the right by being in a very tight line. This circle you see here is just a simple spread mechanic. And that is called Chilling Blast. So just don't box in your friends. If you were kind of on the outside of the icy ground, give them some room to run through so that they don't have to choose between getting blasted by your Chilling Blast or standing on the icy ground.
boss will start to ascend her spiraling lair, stopping at each platform to play out phase 1 some more, before reaching her final platform, which triggers phase 2. Now, during phase 1, boss will cast Breath of Ice, which targets a few players' location and spawns icy ground underneath, which deals damage if you stand in it, and players also slide around on it. You can finally ice skate while raiding. Every now and then, everyone in the raid gets targeted by Chilling Blast, which deals a bit of damage every second for 4 seconds.
This is the spread mechanic.
And upon expiration deals a ton of damage in a 4-yard area. Just spread for it. The cold breath will also target a few players in the raid with enveloping webs, which causes them to drop a sticky gray.
All right, next kind of important combo of abilities there. Envelop, if you see these gray puddles right here, they're different from the icy puddles. And what these do is they prevent you from getting sucked into the boss. Slides. All right, well, we don't get slides there. Gossamer Burst will eventually go off, and it sucks in all raid members. So you need to make sure that you're standing on the web puddles, those gray puddles, or you'll die, or use a movement ability.
Spray liquid on the ground as they walk. Let's call it a sticky webbing. Now, these sticky webbings provide resistance to displacement and sliding, aka you skate a little bit less along the ice paths and get knocked back a little bit less. It also reduces movement speed and it stacks. However, at 5 stacks, you become wrapped in webs and you can't do
Okay, yeah, so use the webs to negate the Gossamer suck. And don't stand on the webs for too long, or else you'll get wrapped in a 30-second stun, which is very bad. Okay, we'll be backfilling as in this slide. Where do I drop the webs when I'm targeted with that? So the range will kind of be in the back. We're going to try to drop webs in the center so that when the Gossamer Burst goes off and we all get sucked in, melee can just simply back up a bit and range can shift forward. Okay, so there's kind of some strata going on. Right. Those are all the mechanics for the first two for the platforms. So that's it. Backfill and don't get sucked in and do a lot of damage. Burst down the big ad. Okay. Moving on to the burn phase at the very top of the spire. Now, when you get targeted with the spread mechanic, it's also going to drop a bomb. We need to make sure that we're getting the bombs off to the side. And we're leaving a channel in the center, and we'll be dropping webs ideally in the center. Why are we dropping them in the center? Gossamer Burst is going to now turn into Repelling Burst, which instead of sucking us into the boss, it's going to push us all away. So we need to make sure that we have a path in the center where we're not getting knocked into bombs, but also where we have some webs to stand on. Last little mechanic that they added in the last phase is the boss will periodically target a player with Web Blast. The only way to remove Web Blast after you've been blasted by it is to have a caustic spiderling explode on you. So we'll drop a mark. It'll be super simple. If you get targeted with Web Blast, you'll run to the mark. You'll get placed in a cocoon in which you cannot do anything. And Off-Tank's going to bring a caustic spiderling over to you, and we are all going to kill the caustic spiderling so that you can get out of the cocoon.
Just an FYI, I believe as of last testing, the Web Blast also knocks you back a decent chunk, not quite as far as the burst, but have to be aware of your positioning with that Web Blast. Being on the mark means your cocoon will be a little bit further back.
So probably run in front of the mark.
Yeah, run as close to the boss as is reasonable, where you're in line with the safe zone.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's all the major mechanics of the boss. The burn phase, do as much damage as possible while dealing with these edited mechanics. Any questions? Ascend platforms, fill it up, and deal with burn phase.
We'll be using a Warlock Gate to get up the stairs a little bit quicker between platforms because there's a hell of a run. On Mythic, that run also involves ice and being pulled into your death, so we'll be using the gate to bypass the pull mechanic when we get there.
Can an evoker save me if I get knocked off?
If they're very quick, yes.
As long as they don't get knocked off too. They'll kill you.
An evoker can save both another player and themselves from being pulled off or pushed off with good timing.
One might even say that they would rescue them.
You could say that.
Okay, we are an hour in, and we'll spend the next hour going over the last bit of bosses here. So let's take a quick 5-minute break.
There's no DBM break timer here, so just try to be back at the 5-minute mark after the hour. Oh, there's a 5-minute mark. Look at that. Look at that. He's all on it.
Fancy.
There is no ready check though, so if you're not back, we're going without you.
Where's Gumber?
Yeah, it's Tuesday. Gummer couldn't make it.
Somebody else get the soundboard going. Go.
I could probably do it in 5 minutes. I'm not going to, but I probably could.
Well, we all could.
No, I've already got a virtual audio cable installed.
Okay, let's jump back in here. Dithea, the Ascended. All right, so this is another platform boss, very similar to our Artificer, in which we're going to have groups that go and accomplish killing tasks on each platform. As you can kind of see the overall movement here. We're going to have a star platform, a circle platform, and a diamond platform, or you can just call it 1, 2, 3. Right. Some major mechanics going on. There's constantly tornadoes that are going to be spawning. They are some spread mechanics with rings. You just want to spread those out, really. And then the major thing is these volatile infusers, these big old big ads, really, that upon death, they will explode. And that explosion is enough to knock players onto platforms. So that is how we will traverse the platforms. Okay. It also has a cast that needs to be kicked. Some other minor mechanics that are going on. Empowered conductive marks, those rings, make sure you're just not standing behind the tanks, as the tank mechanic here is that they get a huge knockback, so you don't want to have the tanks getting knocked into those rings. And then there's a small suck to the center of the arena every once in a while. It looked like you could just run out of it. It wasn't that crazy. All right, so how is this going to work? So we're going to have two groups, right? Group 1 is, going to be the one that goes on the platform 1 first. The boss will always be in the center. We're going to kill the big ad on a mark, star, circle, and diamond. Group 1 will be positioned on the outside of the death of that big ad so that they get knocked onto the platform. Group 2 needs to make sure that they don't get knocked off of the main platform. So they're going to be in between the big ad and the boss, so that they just get knocked into this area below, right? Same thing coming back for group 2. The knock still is going to affect you even way on the platform. So you want to make sure that you're on the inside of the boss over here so that you don't get knocked off of the main platform. Basically, just always be close to whatever the active platform is that we're working on. And group 1 will be another big ad that you're going to have to kill on the platform, on the little platform, and get knocked back onto the main platform. You repeat that 3 times with the same minor mechanics going on, tornadoes everywhere, rings that you don't want to tanks in and that you want to spread out. What looks like the difficulty here was to make sure that when you're spreading out for rings, you're positioning yourself in a position to get knocked onto the platform or to not get knocked off of the main platform. That looked like one of the pinch points here. So yeah, group 1 will go first, and then group 2, and then group 1 will have to go again. We'll probably do an edited sort of thing, like on Artificer, because as you're on the platform, you do get a stacking debuff. So we'll probably have like group 1, group 2, and then some sort of mega AoE group that can get down that last platform fast. Very similar to our Artificer here. Okay. Any questions? I thought this fight was pretty straightforward. Any expansions to Cinder? Is there anything that I missed?
A couple things. The conductive marks, the lightning rings around you, are exactly the same as the ones from the council fight. The difference is, until Mythic, there's no soak point to drop them. You just have to wait for them to time out. On Mythic, there's an entire mechanic based around dropping them in a very specific way, but I expect that'll take us a while to get to, so I won't put it in your brains now. You just have to stay spread until it times out. I think it's 20 or 30 seconds, depending on difficulty. We'll have markers on the tanks' heads. Be very aware of those markers and do not be standing behind them with a ring. That was mentioned, but I just want to re-emphasize that. If you spread the lightning onto the tank, the fight is totally fucked.
The tanks cannot see behind them, so we have to be aware there. Don't kill our fellow tanks.
When we're on the side platforms, the only way to get back onto the main platform is to kill the infuser. If you kill the infuser before all the little ads are dead, those little ads are going to keep casting for the rest of the fight when you get blown off. So just make sure that we're, I can't believe I'm saying this, but padding.
Yes, and they're all grippable as well. So, you know, fixture will be very important.
If we have a second DK, perhaps they will be in separate groups.
Should be me at least. Unless, you know, I'm on DK.
Perform. Wink, wink.
I'm not worried.
You hear that, other DPS? He's confident in his spot.
Okay. All right. Yeah, pretty straightforward fight. So we can jump on to the next if there's no further questions there. All right, Kurog Grim Totem. This one looks very fun. All right, so Kurog doesn't have too many abilities himself, but when he's in one of these altar areas, he gets a defined set of mechanics that are going to pop out. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of bring him into an altar area, deal with those mechanics, and then shift to a new altar area. He gets more amplified in his minor abilities the longer that he's in these altar areas. So we can't just shift between them rapidly because every time we shift, we take a bunch of raid-wide damage. So there's fire, frost, earth, and air, and they all have their own things. Let's jump into that. Right. So the fire altar, it has two major mechanics going on here. There's going to be magma burst, these puddles, and we are going to bait them. They appear under 2 or 3 individuals. So what we're going to do is we're going to hug the left side of the zone here. As they spawn, we're just going to shift over, okay? And eventually we'll fill up like 75% of this area. And I'm sure as we get on to higher difficulties, it'll be even more. But that's how we'll deal with that.
If I can cut in, on the fire altar, we're going to be pixel stacked. We're going to treat this particular section of the fight like Mythic Council of Blood might have been.
Why so?
Because of the two mechanics on the screen here. If we can bait the puddles basically on top of each other, that's fantastic. That'll keep more of the area clear. And if we are all stacked together, it is very easy for the second mechanic, Searing Carnage, to get run out of the group together while the rest of the group just steps the other way. That will be exactly like the council dance.
Okay, yep. And then as he's in an area, he'll build up energy. And when he reaches 100 energy in a certain area, the major mechanic of that area will happen. In the case of the fire, it's going to be Searing Carnage. And that's going to select a couple players, which are going to continuously drop these explosive pools of lava, whatever, swirlies. And those really, really, really hurt. So if you're targeted by it, you're going to run away from the raid. If you're not targeted by it, you're going to stick with the boss in the safe area and run in the safe direction, still maintaining the boss within the fire altar area. So you can kind of see that here. Carnage is running out, boss and other people not selected by Carnage shifting over. That's the fire area. Frost area, look very basic. So we're going to kind of hold them off to the side. It doesn't matter whether on the left or on the right. And there's going to be orbs that emanate from the boss that stun. This looked like a melee killer. So melee be aware of this. They shoot out in kind of like a star pattern. You'll see it. Here, let me see if. Let me just pull up the video really quick. Here they are right here.
For not dispelling you instantly when you didn't.
And they just emanate from the boss, right? Super simple. They move very slow, but they hurt and they stun. So don't get hit. Okay. The major mechanic at absolute 0. At 100 energy is there's going to be 2 soak circles. We're going to try it out with a melee group and a range group. And one will just be in melee and the other will be in range. And you just have to split them up and soak them. Take a look at that.
1 stack of frostbite to target's hit, and at 2 stacks you get frozen solid, and this cannot be.
And you can see kind of the 2 soaks for right here. You can't overlap them. So yeah, we're just going to soak those. Pretty simple, straightforward there. There's also a stacking frostbite and debuff all the time, I think is what it's called, as you're just in the zone. So I guess you can call that the third mechanic. Right, moving on to the earth. Okay, so we're going to kind of hold him against the wall here. Periodically, he'll shoot out enveloping earth on several players that just needs to get healed off. And then kind of his major but not major mechanic here is he has a sludge fist type slam. We're holding him against the wall to maximize the room that we have to run out. Run out of that. Don't get hit. His 100 energy ability is Seismic Rupture. He's going to target a bunch of players. I think it's all of them. Let's find
just a large pile. I think it's like 6 or something of swirls.
Here it is. Yeah,
that's the intermission.
Oh.
The raid deals a bit of nature damage and increases breaker add.
Yeah. So anyways, brown swirls will spawn in areas. Don't get hit by those. When they expire and explode, these Earthbreaker adds will be spawned from the brown swirlies. So, spread out, don't get hit, and then be ready for some AoE burst. And that is the 100 energy ability, Seismic Rupture. It spawns the Earthbreaker adds. Okay. Moving on to the last altar. The air altar. This one seemed like the worst that we'll probably try to not be in. So the ability that's going to be going on all the time is kind of these mark soaks. Several players will get marked, and they need to pair up with somebody that is not marked to kind of spark in between them. All right, so you can kind of see that here indicated by the blue lines. You just spread out, find a buddy. We'll wait for it to expire. And then the second ability is kind of like the Night Runners in Denathrius, but with no lines, so just bombs. They're just bombs. Just run out of the raid. Don't blow up your friends. At 100 energy, he's going to spawn a bunch of soak circles. Let's take a look at that now, because it looks like that is a wipe mechanic. Okay, so you can see here the soak circle, the 100 energy ability. They're definitely not around people, so they kind of spawn wherever in the altar area, but we need to make sure to soak those.
Soak one and everyone in the
or
raid
they're
takes
going
a ton
to
of
miss
damage.
this one right
Also
here.
gives Kirog Thundering
And they all
Dominance,
just die.
which is 5%.
So we need to make sure to soak. Those are the 2 bombs you see right there. And these individuals that are covered in lightning is that pair up ability, little lightning crash. Okay, and then at 33 and 66% health, he's going to go into the center and he's going to spawn 2 big elemental adds. And those all have their own kind of major mechanics, it was pretty unclear on how you get certain ads. So we're just going to kind of play it by ear. It didn't look like that there's any way to target a certain set of ads. So we'll get two. We'll have to deal with the major mechanics of those ads. And then depending on the ones that you get, they also buff up a certain altar area. So during the intermission here, he's going to go to the center. We're going to get two. Say we get like an earth and a fire. Then after say 66%, when he comes back down, we might decide to go to the frost altar or the air altar, so we don't have to deal with the enhanced boss from those intermission ads. So our shifting between the altars probably will be defined for the first 100 to 66%. It'll probably just go fire, frost, earth, air, but after the 66%, if the tuning is pretty gruesome, then we might play it by ear on which altars we're going to do after intermissions. That's all for Kurog. I missed anything, Cinder? Anything you want to expand upon?
The only reason that we have to do any particular altar is that the longer we spend in each quadrant, the stronger he gets with that element, so it slowly ramps the damage of those abilities up. The intermission ads will also ramp that damage up, and we can't just quickly swap between all of them, because every time the boss crosses one of those lines around the outside, he will zap the entire raid for damage and put a debuff on us. That means if we get zapped again, we die. So no two zaps in a row.
Cool. Yep, and kind of just the minor mechanics that the boss is constantly doing on the tanks. Is this small frontal cone, and then a stacking sundering strike.
Oh, and the tank mechanic knocks you back, so we may want to be spending most of the fight against a wall, or at least close to a wall.
I think that's the swap, right?
Yeah, the tank swap will knock the current person back. So.
Well, any questions on Kurog Grim Totem? All right. The last two bosses of the raid definitely increase in intensity. So Sindir is going to go over Broodkeeper Durna here.
Look at our amazing diagram that we prepared. There it is.
It has a lot going on, so just expect like 5 slides here.
Yeah.
And then Razagath, I don't think anybody knows yet, so
yeah,
we're gonna have to play that one as we get there. Yeah, I'll pass it over to Sindir now to explain the last boss of the night.
Yeah. No visuals for this one. The nitty-gritty of Broodkeeper's mechanics are so varied because there's like 12 different kinds of ads that will show up. So I don't have anything much prepared, but this arena is going to be filled to the brim with little eggs. And we cannot kill the boss until every single egg hatches. Throughout the fight, she targets a couple of eggs to hatch faster. And at the same time, she's going to throw her staff down. Our big goal of the fight will be that a couple players walk up to the staff, and you'll get an extra action button ability that lets you basically have the staff focus on you. It draws a laser. You run the laser over an egg, and instead of the egg hatching into a monstrous dragon that is extremely hard to deal with, the egg hatches into a tiny whelp that we can cleave down. However, over the course of the fight, on each of those little like 4 elemental gem areas, a giant ad wave will spawn regularly. And each of those ad waves has a bunch of mechanics, a bunch of tank mechanics, a bunch of things to dodge. It will genuinely be information overload to go over all of it here before we see it. But for the most part, on normal and heroic, we're just going to try to have the boss be where those ads are, so we can focus and cleave things down altogether. We'll be running around the room. I think there's a fixed route we need to take based on the ad spawns. I don't think they're RNG, but I'm not sure. And once every single egg is either destroyed or hatched, the boss will enrage and we have to burn her down. It's outside of the individual nitty-gritty of dodge this, focus that, kick this, that comes with each of the different ad waves. There isn't actually that much more to the fight, mechanically and positioning-wise, until Mythic at least. We'll just be sort of moving as a group and switching our priority over to the biggest ads as they show up. Hopefully, we get there as soon as possible so we can learn exactly how wrong that was.
Are we going to have specific people doing the lightning stuff the whole time?
I think there might be a reason why we can't, but I don't know specifically just yet.
Okay.
I believe it debuffs you when you take the staff for a little while.
Yeah, it hurts.
Well, yes, it does hurt. I'm wondering if it hurts more the second, third, and fifth time. But I can't find proof of that, so tentatively we can have dedicated staff people who have good mobility and survivability. But otherwise we'll be assigning a rotation of people to do it, I guess, if that doesn't work.
Cool. Yeah, so, keep an eye out. I'm going to post these prog raid strategies on raid info again, if you didn't catch that at the beginning. And the idea is that this is something that you can have up during raid, so you always know the strategy that we're performing. It's a living document. You can access all of these raid plans on the quick links. There's also these thank you videos, and we'll be posting our kill videos below. Any questions on any of the fights, or just raid?
Negative.
Who's ready to go do some M0s?
We're already doing it, man.
I'm not quite there yet, but I'm working on it. I've been really busy.
All right.
All right. Then I think we will wrap up class. We may have another one as we get closer to the raid. Just stand by for that. And, maybe if this was effective and we all show up to raid super prepared and everybody knows what's going on, we'll continue to do these types of things. Yeah. Thank you guys for coming. Feel free to message me if you have any questions about anything.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
A+ class.
Thanks everyone for taking the time out of your